Welcome everyone to our Rhapsody Strategies monthly webinar. It's great to have you a part of the call. My name is Rob Dale, and I am one of the coaches here at Rhapsody Strategies. You'll see we've got a few of the other coaches on the call as well. We've got Steve out in Calgary and Eric, who is here in Ottawa. I shouldn't say here in Ottawa. I'm in Ottawa, so that's why I think here in Ottawa, but it's in Ottawa. Catherine and Trevor, I'm going to introduce in a few minutes as they are going to be presenting us some information and material today. When we started Rhapsody, one of the first things that we did was a seminar call, a training called the Impact Accelerator. And it was one of our most well-received one-day training kind of events that we would do. And each year we would introduce that, or a couple of times during the course of the year. And it was really around how to set yourself up for the following year to be a significant year, an effective year with certainly being able to achieve the goals and things that you set out for. Of course, we're in a different type of environment doing this as a webinar, but we thought, well, let's take some of the information that we would normally present in a concept of a full day training, as well as just to have a bit of a conversation around what are some of the things that we can do in a COVID world to even focus in on the year coming up and into 2021, and how to make that an impactful year for us. It's incredible. Again, I'm doing a lot of strategic sessions with clients right now where it's so difficult to even figure out, well, how do I plan for 2021 when we really kind of understand that we have no ideas there. We're hearing great news, even today, some news about vaccines. Are we going to see something happening, early? Is this going to be, late summer or early summer, whatever? There's so many uncertainties. And yet, even when there's some uncertainty around us, I think that there are some core things that we can be doing in order to really set our focus where it should be. So we're gonna talk about that, how we can strengthen ourselves for 2021, and I'm really excited to have both Trevor and Catherine as the kind of the facilitators for today to present us with some information. Both of them are master coaches with Rhapsody. Trevor is one of our founding coaches, the founders of Rhapsody, and is certainly got a wealth of experience in working with all kinds of different organizations. Catherine as well has worked with so many different types of organizations, was very much involved in some organizations that supported small businesses before coming on to join us at Rhapsody and to be part of what we're doing here, and has been so effective with all of their the clients and the different people that they've been serving. So I'm going to just kind of guide a little bit of the conversation, but we're really going to open it up for that. Our new webinars kind of format is we're going to be going until 4:30 in this context, and then at 4:30 we're going to open it up certainly for just more conversation. The video will end, and we'll just kind of dive into some more conversation. But maybe we'll start with, and then Catherine, maybe I'll start with you. Is let's just kind of provide some opening thoughts, ideas as we talk about the concept or the idea of setting an impact, setting the best strategies for 2021. What comes to mind for you?
Well, when I think about that, I think about the rules, and not the way you might think. We've created a bunch of rules in our organizations and in our lives, and for good reason in most cases, but not always. And so shift some focus to your rules, and master the rules that need to be mastered for sure, but be open to transcending those rules. Or a much more fun way to say that is let's break some rules. There's way more fun to do that way. So which rules no longer serve you, your organization or your team, and which rules are begging to be broken that will help you propel yourself forward past COVID? So It's important though. Remember I said you created those rules for a reason. So let's make sure that we are aware and keep in mind that we don't mess up what we put in place in the first place. And having the wisdom gives us the permission to think beyond the ways that things have always been done. And we have to start with ourselves, of course. So internally, this would be examine your own beliefs. Um, Sometimes you just have to let go of your beliefs. And a perfect example of that is what we experienced here at Rhapsody. In mid-February, a good 30% of our clients had no interest in doing anything that was remote coaching. Mid-March, they had no choice. We had no choice. We had to do it that way. By mid-April, they're telling us, you know, kind of liking the 30-second commute, kind of liking not having to find parking or pay for it. So it's interesting how our beliefs can shift, and with being forced to do them. And there's another piece to this that we have to think about, and it's that be careful what you're holding on to, because if you hold on too tight, you might just go down with the ship. Now, yes, as a leader, you're supposed to be the anchor for your team some of the time, but sometimes you're supposed to be the person to release your team. So yeah, relook at your rules.
Oh, I love that. And, I think of one of my clients who, to your point, had no interest. Virtual wouldn't work.
Mhm.
Now they're at a place where they would never go back to having everybody in an office, that it works so well. Trev, what would you add to this? What some kind of opening thoughts, some ideas around what would you say as being kind of fundamental stuff that we should be thinking about?
I think Catherine really opened it up beautifully around the notion that if you want to have your best year, either personally or organizationally, it's got to flow from you. You can't expect the organization to make your year better for you as a leader in your organization. It's your job to actually provide it with the guidance and the leadership for it to grow and develop and transform. And the same is obviously true for ourselves. We need to take full accountability for that. And I think, so, so the basic premise is you're not going to have a better year than you have a better self, right? You need to have that full ownership of self as we go through this. And so the question then is, say, what are the actions that we can take? Like, where do we focus? Where do we go in order to bring that leadership that's going to let that really perform at an individual level, as a leader, or at an organizational level? And I'm a big proponent. Those of you who know me will go, oh yeah, he's saying that again. So I'll try and say it in a fresh way. I'm a big proponent of the fundamentals. Get back to the basics, right? Fundamentals, it refers to foundation, to origin, to that which is primary, right? These are the essential things in terms of who we are, why we started the journey that we're on. We need to get back to those so that we can start to eliminate the drift that inevitably happens as well. I know there have been times where I felt it in my leadership and in my role, and you start to say, okay, I need to get back to my core, to my fundamental, to these essential pieces in order to really bring the level of leadership and the energy and the passion and the drive that's required to pull that off. And I think that core, getting really clear about what is that core essence in your organization, or what are the core things for ourselves that we really need to dive into in order to give us the strength that we're going to need to weather whatever storm. And we've weathered a few this year collectively. It's been a strange year, and there's no signs of it slowing down really so far. So we know we've got more of this in the future. As leaders, our job is not to be owned by the context, but it's to say, how will we choose our way through this situation? And I think it's these practices, this is where mastery lives, right? Mastery is the deliberate, focused, repetitive action. And that's very different from that definition of insanity, which is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. It's different because it's deliberate, it is purposeful, we're observing ourselves while we're doing it. And so each time it's a little bit different, it's a little improved, it's a little more core and driven into us, so that these things really flow more and more automatically. And that gives us truly that foundation that we can build on.
Oh, so good, so true. Milan is on the call, and I know that as a former football player, he'd be able to tell you that oftentimes the coach will get the players to get back to the fundamentals, and especially if they're in a losing season, or if there's a lot of crisis, or the team's lost their confidence. A good coach, a good leader always brings the team back to, let's just focus on the fundamentals, focus on the basics. And so even today, when people are feeling a little bit out of control, get back to what you can control. What are the basics? What are those foundational pieces? And to be able to put the focus on that. I love that. Listen, we're big believers in powerful questions. So maybe let's talk about some questions. What would be some of the questions, and maybe Catherine, I'll start with you on this, but what would be some of the questions that we should be asking ourselves if we are trying to get back to those basics, trying to get back to focus to make the best impact?
Well, one is to clean house, and that's what do you need to stop doing, right? We get so focused on what we need to do. What do we need to stop doing? Or another way to say this is, what do you need to let go of? What is no longer serving you, and being intentional about it, taking the time to think it through. So why is this so important? Because it frees up energy to do the things that you need to do. And I talk to my clients about this piece a lot. It frees up brain space. When we're congested, stressed, or just generally caught up in things and on the hamster wheel, it physiologically prevents your brain from being able to be creative. And the creativity part of your brain is the one that allows you to solve problems. So if we can let go of things, we can clear up some space. And it's not just about putting our energy where it'll be most impactful, but also to let go of things that no longer serve us. And that releases new energy.
Excellent. Yeah, I think there's so much truth to that for sure. What else? What other questions? Good.
Well, I'd say my favorite question is, who do you fearlessly need to become? Not just who you should become, but who you must fearlessly become. And, the operative words here are must and fearless, really. And it suggests that you need to become a new kind of leader. If you want your company to change, and Trevor mentioned this earlier, if you want your company to change, it's got to start with you. And if you want this to be your best year yet, then you've got to grow your leadership as well. And so then the question becomes, is this change motivated by fear or by something else? And at Rhapsody, one of our values is epic transformation. Now, you may notice I didn't say change, I said transformation. And a big difference between change and transformation is that we change behaviors because of fear. We transform because we want to become something else. So one is a moving away from function, and the other is a moving towards function. Mm-hmm. And the moving towards function is a really positive motivator. So who must you fearlessly become in order to make your 2021 your best year yet?
Great questions, and I'm kind of chuckling because, of course, again, as I mentioned, this is a core value at Rhapsody, and so as soon as you ask what questions we be asking, I love the fact that some of the other coaches, Eric and Steve, are just keep throwing other questions into the chat line. So make sure you're catching those and grabbing those as well. Trev, what would you add to that?
there's the notion that no external transformation happens before an internal transformation happens, right? Everything's inside out. And so one of the questions which for a long time, I would not have said this is the most powerful question you should focus on, but I think maybe I'm growing into it a little bit. It's this question of what are you most grateful for? So for a long time, I thought this was a very fuzzy question. And I thought this is, oh, let's just focus on happy things and we'll be happy, and focus on better things and we'll be better. And I think I'm starting to realize that view was maybe a little naive on my part. How we look at things will determine what we see. And how we're looking, for example, think of your team, how you look at your team. Are you looking at the excellence they bring, at their commitment, at their drive? Are you looking at the mistakes they made, at their shortcomings? What are you looking at? And so this notion of gratitude is kind of a great, powerful question that you can say, what am I grateful for? What am I grateful for as it relates to my clients? What am I grateful for in my life? What am I grateful for in my team? And this isn't to hide from the things that aren't working. This is, though, to bring with whatever situation you're in, an appreciation that there are always things that we can be grateful for. There are always things that are feeding us, that are fueling us. And I think it's being deliberate and intentional in our thinking, owning our thoughts. I can talk more about that in a couple of minutes. But it also lets us build on good things, right? It lets us say, it's not that everything is a mess and we can't solve anything. We've all heard people pour out their lives saying everything's a wreck, nothing's good, everything's unfair, all of this stuff. And we realize actually in any situation, even in the worst of them, and we've all been in our own worst situations and they have not been good, that there are still moments where we can find things to be grateful for. We can find people to be grateful for. We can find moments to be grateful for. And by anchoring into those, it actually puts a different tone on the day right away. And I think that gratitude actually, and that gratefulness fuels hope. It fuels a perspective. It fuels a mindset that we can point at whatever problem we're facing, whatever situation we're in, and whatever transformation journey that we're on. So it's kind of like the fuel you're putting in your engine, right? You can put in low grade, grumpy, complainy, whiny fuel, or you can put in, powerful, grateful jet fuel, and you're going to get a very different result. So I think over time I started to realize, what, these fuels are different, and it makes a difference what you're going to spend your mental energy on, and so to choose carefully to put it into that gratitude.
Those of you that know Trevor know that it has to be 2020 when Trevor's the one that's leading the charge on touchy-feely questions.
We're in a dark place, people, a dark place. Thanks for saying that with Carrie on the call. I'm glad you're here, Carrie.
That's right. Carrie's like, yeah. No, and actually you and I have had some great conversations around this, and I've seen it in you, how you have lived out this notion of really pausing to be grateful for things and to be expressing those. And you're right, it really does change how we think. Some of these questions are leading into what I would probably refer to, I would see as habits that we can form. We know that, or we've heard that certainly there's the saying that we're the sum of our habits. So we the things that we do, so if we believe that, then what would be some of the habits that we should be considering as we approach a new year? What are some things that we could perhaps start doing on a regular basis to help us to help us set that place of gratefulness in our mind? So maybe this time I'll start with you, Trev. What would be one of the first habits you would recommend to people?
Sure. I'll start with another thing, which I thought was, not very productive and a little squishy. And now, Carmen raised her eyebrows, and Carmen, I've recommended it to you. So we're all on this journey together. All right. We're all on this journey together, and it's journaling. And so here's my hang up with journaling. It was around Dear Diary. Here's what I felt today. So it was very feeling based. It was like storytelling. It was all of this stuff. I've tried it a few times over the years. It never really kind of bit into it successfully. I've had periods of it. The last little while has been different. And here's why. I now really refer to it as my, more of a personal reflection exercise. so it's a way of looking at what happened today, and what does it mean? It's a moment to pause and kind of go, what was that? And I think this is incredibly critical, because we need to keep looking at what we're doing if we expect to change what we're doing. And we need to be able to go, oh, so here's what happened. Here's how I would describe it. And here's either the result I see, the impact it had, the progress it made or didn't, in order to start to identify better ways to do things, in order to be more honest with ourselves about what's really happening in our world, in our lives, in our performance, in our behavior, and also in others as well, because we're telling stories about what everybody else is doing too. And this is a way to kind of put it on paper and look at it. And if we're not prepared to look at what's really happening in our lives or in our businesses, we're not going to make any tangible progress. We're going to keep plowing the same field over and over. And I'm starting to really come to appreciate how important a role journaling plays in that process.
Awesome. I love what Eric in the chat window, he called journaling the meditation on paper. And I think that's a great way to see that. So that's great for sure. Catherine, what would you add?
Well, first, I just have to say thank you, Trevor. You inspired me. We had a chat about journaling. You inspired me to journal more. Thank you. So I'd say, if we go back to that saying that you mentioned, Rob, if we're the sum of our habits, then a really great book to read or listen to, whatever your format of expanding your horizons is Tiny Habits by B.J. Fogg. And it's a tiny book. It's a super easy read. And in it, the main premise of the book that Fogg talks about is he indicates that the most effective way of developing a new habit is to tie it to an old habit. So old habit, regular old brushing your teeth every day. New habit, doing push-ups. So every time you brush your teeth, you go and you do 5 push-ups. You brush your teeth 3 times a day, you're doing 15 push-ups by the end of the day. Well, that's a hell of a lot more than the big fat 0 that I currently do. So that is a way to get you moving and using, getting these new habits ingrained into your day-to-day. And then also for those of you who have employees, I'd suggest the book, and I've talked about it before, Get a Grip by Wickman and Patton. And by the end of it, I guarantee you will have identified gaps in your organization. And this helps you to determine what new habits need to be implemented into your organization or yourself, and what ones need to be gotten rid of. So I'm interested, I love this stuff. So I'm really interested to see if you guys do this exercise. Feel free to email me your results. I'd love to see that. Oh, and the links are in the chat box.
Yeah, I just threw them both in there.
Thanks,
Trev, we have time for one more. What would be another habit that you would recommend we get into?
Just one. I had 2, so I'll combine them into one. It's embrace feedback. It's embrace feedback like you never have before in your life. And you know what? It's not enjoyable. It's not fun. It's all uncomfortable. Good feedback should be a bit uncomfortable. It should be helping us realize where we can change, where we can grow. And so to be able to surround yourself with people who will speak truth gently and with real care for you and care for the outcomes, and to embrace the feedback from them, from others, but to continue to look actively for feedback. And again, this is where journaling helps, because it's a way to document that as you go as well. And I think as part of that, Rob, is to, feedback's uncomfortable in part because most people are lousy at giving it. And so it never really feels good. I've said before, when people say, hey, can I be honest with you? I say no, because they're about to beat the crap out of me with honesty. And so that's why we have this notion of gentle honesty at Rhapsody as well, is we need to hear what is really happening. We need that honesty, but it needs to be delivered in a way where people can actually hear it and act on it and internalize it. And I think bringing that to life is incredibly important. And one of the things that I would encourage you to do is, when you start to experience the discomfort that goes with feedback, is to identify, oh, this is uncomfortable, I'm not liking this feeling. And second is relabel the feeling. Because it's not about, oh, this is uncomfortable, so I need to make this stop. It's, oh, this is uncomfortable, a door is opening. And then the decision is, do you want to go through the door or not? And sometimes we trip on the door, we fall down, we can't find the doorknob, we're no good at it, we're clumsy for a while, but bit by bit, we start to figure that out, and we're able to do that. But it's only by receiving feedback on a personal basis and all across our organization, is to listen, and then act. Remember, feedback is about acting on what you're receiving, on those messages coming back. I think that is, in and of itself, absolutely transformative. You want to have a great year, listen to what your clients are saying, your team is saying, listen to what your business, if it was sitting in on the call and it could speak and chat as well, what's it trying to tell you? And then listen as well internally to what needs to change for you, and to continue to embrace that feedback. That would be my number one suggestion, I think, Rob.
Yeah, so good. And Arthur, thank you for that. Even go a little deeper on that is making sure that the source of the feedback is authentic. And even when we're getting that feedback internally, make sure that the script you're telling yourself, the story you're telling yourself is true. Because oftentimes, right, don't get your feedback from Twitter, don't get your feedback from, make sure that is an authentic place. But there's so much value and power in that. So thank you for that. We're going to, in a moment, shift over to open it up, and I'm really going to encourage, we're going to have about 15 minutes where those of you on the Zoom call will have the opportunity to do something that is a bit more difficult for others that are watching it, and that's to be able to provide some thoughts, comments, and questions. Thank you, Catherine and Trev, for guiding this call and the conversation around this. And Trev, I'm going to kind of go back to you with just, if you were to give one piece of advice, one kind of thing, and I'll give you a second to think about that, to just mention, as I have mentioned, we're not doing a call in December. And so we'll be announcing, and hopefully you're on our mailing list and you get the emails notifying you about these calls, but we'll be sending out information about a call in January. So Trev, piece of advice, what would be the one kind of action item that you would invite people to do?
Yeah, I think it's a time to regroup and reassess, right? That's what's great about kind of a year-end period or the beginning. For me, it's usually around Labor Day. That always feels like the beginning of the new year for me for some reason. Maybe that's from years of school. But I think it's a great time for, if you're working with a coach, to revisit DISC fundamentals. Revisit the Rhapsody business assessment. If you're looking at the business part of it, take a fresh look and get really critical. Say, what's actually happening here? One of the great questions you can ask yourself and through it with your coach is, what am I pretending not to see? Are there things that we keep in our peripheral vision that we're not bringing out in front of us, looking at directly, in order to really say, what's got to happen here? And I would do that if you're not being coached by us. So we have a kind of a one-off program that you just do and say, I can get this snapshot, I can get clear on where I am, I can establish my priorities for the year, I can set an action plan for the first 90 days. And then out of that, you start to realize, what else do you need to support you? Who do you need in your world, your life, your business, in order to drive that forward? That's what I would suggest as probably the most powerful action you could take right now.
Awesome. So yeah, if you are interested in something like that, if you've got, you're working with a coach, certainly reach out to that coach. If you're not and you'd like to get some more information, that's part of the reason why I put my email address right in my chat window. You can fire an email off to me, and I'm happy to connect you with one of our coaches to talk about that. I mentioned right at the beginning this notion of the Impact Accelerator we used to do, and we've really taken that and created a more of a Jumpstart one-on-one program that we can do, and happy to have that conversation with you. So again, Catherine, Trevor, thank you so much for guiding this conversation by bringing some insight, giving us some really creative idea tips that we can use. I know we're at about 4:30, 4:31, and so for some, you may need to head off the call, but for others, let's just open it up. And I would love to hear from some of our guests that are on the call. If you've got a question for either Trevor or Catherine, or some thoughts or comments, I would certainly welcome you to do that. And again, you certainly can continue to make comments in the chat window, but I see Milan, you've got your kind of waving a little bit. So why don't I turn it over to you? What say ye?
Well, what I did is I created a game plan for 2021. No surprise. Being a football coach, ex-football coach, ex-athlete, ex-soccer coach. And I didn't make 20 plans, didn't make 20 things I needed to do. It's overwhelming. I don't mind sharing with you four things. One is focus on providing best services of existing clients and keep in touch with them. Just to say, hello, how are you? Are you okay? Is there anything I can do for you? That was number one. Number two, identify who is in my network that I'm already doing business with. Who's referring me business, or who am I referring to business? Focus on them. And of course, the book that was just written by Dan Sullivan and another gentleman called Who Not How. All these years, we keep thinking, how are we going to improve our business? What are we going to do? COVID's here. Who do we need to have in our stable? Coaches. Eric, we got to connect again. I've been thinking about that a lot. The other part is, who else do you need in your stable? Because we always think about how are we going to get from here to there? Who do we need? So that was the other one. As part of that, number two. Third one, better communication between the staff to make sure that we do everything possible for every opportunity. And again, the fourth was improve our reports and see if we can download some of our tasks to somebody else. Instead of us having to do it. It's like a guy said, if I learned to type, I would have never become a general.
Right. That's a great quote. Thank you, Milan. I chuckle because when you mentioned that about reconnecting with Eric, and I know you've worked with Eric and had coaching with Eric, and you can hear it in even what you've been outlining. There's the voice of somebody who not only is able to coach, but has been coached. So thank you for those suggestions as well. So great insight for sure. Who else? Any other comments, thoughts, or question that you might have for one of our speakers?
Apparently, we were very clear.
You guys.
We're so good at that, Trevor.
Rob, can I offer a thought?
Yes, please.
One piece I think is really important is about ownership, right? People talk a lot about business ownership, and they throw the word ownership around a lot, but it's got a very specific meaning, and it can play out a lot of different ways. And I think the most powerful, I'll go the other way. The least powerful form of ownership is thinking because you signed a document and you now own a business, that something happened. Nothing happened. All you did was sign your name. It's what we do after we make that signature, or in the lead up to it afterwards, that really defines it. And it's when when leaders are able to own all of the problems and issues of their organization, regardless of where they came from, to truly own them, that's ownership, right? So it's to say, I own this problem of COVID. Whatever this is going to be, this is mine now. This is mine. Whatever comes into the orbit of the organization becomes us. That is true ownership. It doesn't matter how it got there. It doesn't matter who did it, whether it's fair, unfair, just, unjust, does not matter. That is true ownership. And there's a version of it that also plays out for ourselves. It's, are we actually owning ourselves as well? Or are we doing the same thing? Are we saying, well, that's not fair, this happened, I've got all of these, I'm working with this, whatever that is, these people don't know what they're doing. I'm like, ooh, there's no these people. Those are your people, and you own that. And it's taking that full ownership there. And one thought that's really growing for me more and more is the notion of owning the day. And it's, some people will use the language winning the day. I'm like, I think ownership is actually more powerful. And that notion of owning the day is like right from the moment you wake up. Like, how do you want to do that? And it's not that you must spring to life. But it's that you decide how you want to wake up, and you do it only because you decided, and that's enough. And in fact, that's huge. And then bit by bit to take pieces and say, this is how I'm going to start my day. This is how it's going to look like. So there's all kinds of stuff like, you know, the morning miracle, how Elrod, I think it is, and there's a number of others around. This is how you must start your day. And there's every possible meme about every billionaire and every successful person starts their day, and they have this race to see who gets up earliest, basically. I say, find the time that works for you, but do it deliberately. Do it on purpose, and decide, am I going to journal then? What am I going to eat? Am I scrambling and I'm just kind of working my way until I arrive at my desk and that's when I wake up and start my day? I think you've already lost part of the day. And so really owning it from the get-go, and that doesn't mean you have to be insane about it and say, I have to put 75 things in the first 20 minutes in order to make this meaningful. It could be one thing. But I think it's by choosing what that is. And there are people say you got to make your bed first. And like, I think what they're saying is you've got to choose the deliberate actions that you're going to do over and over in order to feel that sense of ownership and purpose in your day. And I think I'm more and more over time, I'm really coming to appreciate that.
Yeah, I so appreciate that you just dismissed the idea that I have to make my bed every day first thing in the morning. So thank you for giving me permission to not do that.
Me too.
Yeah, but there is something to that. There is something to that notion of owning the day. I love that language and the idea behind it. I think too, even one of the again, this is a fundamental for us at Rhapsody. It's one of the things we introduce to clients when we first start working, part of the onboarding process. We talk about, there's some kind of a slide deck that we use, and one of them is this notion of, are you living above the line or below the line? And what you described there is, that's above the line thinking. There's below the line thinking is making excuses. It's blaming everything else and all, focusing on all these things that are there, versus being able to take ownership and say, no, I can be responsible for certain outcomes, and I'm going to, whether it's own the day and live above the line. The number of times where I've asked that not only of clients, but I'll ask it of myself when I'm sitting in a moment, and I'll say, is this above the line or below the line thinking? And to be able to, so I think that there's so much here around. If we want to make a great impact in 2021, it's going to start with here. It's going to start with what we're thinking. It's going to start with what we're believing. We're going to see this right over the next month. We get close to December 31st. Our social media is going to be filled with people, giving the finger to 2020 and saying about, again, how horrible a year it was and how rotten and stupid and all this stuff. And even that, you can fall into a mindset of negativity. There, to your point of earlier, there are some, I think we can all look and say, I know for me, I learned so much about myself in this year that there's so much that I'm grateful for as a result of it. It's all in how we go into 2021 is going to start between how we think and believe. So I think that's so much good that we can focus in on. So thank you for that as well. Any other, just before we certainly, we're coming close to our time to wrap up, but want to just give any opportunity. Anybody else have a thought or a comment or a question that they want to pose to our group here? Norm, I see you unmuted.
Yeah, well, it's along the same lines. I mean, I've always lived with the notion of PMA, positive mental attitude. Like you're saying, the above the line, below the line. Even COVID has a silver lining. I mean, there's some businesses that are unfortunate, that had to close or had some issues in the past year. But then there's also some companies that have grown. and have been able to flourish. So, you know, so it's always important for me to just keep a positive outlook, and maybe I don't want to sound too naive, but there's always a silver lining, and you have to find it.
If that's naive, then I'm right in there with you. So thank you, Norm. Yeah, absolutely. One of my clients is they just had their best best year for revenue and their second best year for profit in the history of the company was in 2020. So you're right. Some companies they have that ability. So. Well, listen, everyone, I want to thank you so much for being a part of our call today. I think that this has been tremendous to really gain some insight again. I think there's so much opportunity here as we go into 2021. There's a lot of uncertainty, but there's a lot of opportunity for us to really allow our businesses to be, and not just our businesses, but for us to be the best version. And so do encourage you to reach out if you've got questions, if you do want to interact or have a conversation with one of the coaches. Certainly encourage you to do that. If not, I hope that you'll all be part of the calls when we move into January. As I mentioned, we'll send out some information. We also send out a summary of this call. Trevor will be sending that out I'm not sure, a couple of weeks, I guess, is when it goes out. And so you can certainly watch for that. Thank you again, Trevor, Catherine, for guiding the call today. And thanks, everyone. And you get to be the first people I get to say this to is I wish you happy holidays and a happy new year. So we'll see you all later. Bye-bye.